You're watching Pulse for the 2nd of November, and it's time for some StarCraft news. I'll just mention before starting that some of the stuff I'm covering this week I'll only be looking at very briefly because there is in fact a lot of news to get through. But that said, in this week's episode we take a look at patch 1.4.2 that is in fact being tested on the PTR right now, along with Season 4 that has already started. We take a look at what's going on in the GSL November, we have a look at an amazingly well-made StarCraft II themed fan movie titled Final Metamorphosis, the next Ponycraft episode, this one's titled Princess of the Swarm, Day 9 playing Amnesia, and more. Yes, a lot more. Let's get started. First up in the StarCraft news this week, StarCraft II Wings of Liberty patch 1.4.2 is currently in development, as a lot of you already know, and is now available for testing on the PTR. So this patch doesn't really contain that many changes, but there are a couple of balance changes making more than a few people uneasy. Now let's have a look at what's going on in the patch notes. I'm not going to be talking about the general changes or bug fixes here, only the balance changes. For Protoss, well, they just seen a bunch of decreases in costs on their upgrades from the Forge. And I gotta say, it is actually a pretty big deal. The upgrade costs of shields level 1, 2 and 3 from the Forge have been decreased pretty significantly. The same can be said for ground weapons level 2 and 3 and ground armor level 2 and 3. You can see the amounts that they were decreased by on your screens right now. Then the only other balance change, and yes, I did say only a couple, was that the Ghost's EMP radius has been decreased from 2 to 1.5. That may not sound like a lot, but that could be 1 or 2 extra units that you're not going to fit into that EMP radius. I'm pretty sure the Terran players aren't happy about that. Anyway, along with the announcement of patch 1.4.2 on the PTR, Season 4 has also begun. Yes, as you all know, beginning with Season 4, 2 changes are coming in for future ladder seasons. Each season will now last approximately 2 months, so that's a bit less than before, and Grandmaster League placement time will be reduced to 1 week. That's down from 2 weeks, to account for the reduced season length. As you all probably know, Season 4 also brought with it a couple of 1v1 ladder map changes. I was incredibly happy to hear that Backwater Gulch is actually out of the map pool now, and Metalopolis is back with close spawns disabled. Close spawns have also been disabled on Shattered Temple, so in my opinion that's really cool, and those maps are definitely going to be a lot more fun for us Zerg players now. So if you are in fact interested, you can see those patch notes below, and you can also have a look at all those new 1v1 ladder maps. With that done, let's have a look at what's happening in the GSL November. Now I have to mention before even starting here that only the Code S has actually begun. The Code A is starting on the 7th of November. But in the Code S Group A, MMA and MC managed to top the group, and in Group B, SC and NEST took the 2 top spots. Group H and D should already have been played by the time this video goes up, so if you want those results you should be able to find them below. There are some pretty good players in those groups, so I suggest you have a look at them. Now as I mentioned, there are no Code A updates to have a look at, but we can see who made it into Code A. There are a couple of big names, and I suggest you check the full list out. The biggest of the lot would probably be the Brood War Pro gamer 4GG. A lot of people are talking about the fact that he made it in, and a lot of people want to see his performance. Anyway, have a look at those player names below, and as I said, check back here next week for the Code A updates. Then, along with all of this, in the extras, you can read about the new GSL format. The guys over at Team Liquid have a nice explanatory post up that will pretty much give you everything you need to know about it. Then also over at Team Liquid, you can have a look at the preview for the GSL November. They always have these, and they're pretty much always worth looking at. Take a look at a pretty interesting post over at ESFI World titled 32 Notes Before the GSL November Round of 32. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot of stuff that I definitely didn't know myself. And lastly, you can have a look at a couple of videos that were recorded by various people at the Code A qualifiers. That's all I've got for you in the tournament and event news. Now let's head on over to the tournament and event smalls. First up, over at ESFI World, you can read how Stefano dominated Mana to win the ESWC 2011 StarCraft II tournament. There have been a couple more MLG Providence player invites and changes to the roster. The replays from MLG Orlando are up, so if you wanted those, you can get them right now. You can see a couple more DreamHack Winter invites. You can have a look at the Republic of Gamers Stars invite brackets. You can read that Total Biscuit and Apollo are set to cast that tournament, so that's no doubt going to be an amazing one to watch. You can read how July and Bomber are going to be playing a show match against each other at GameX in Stockholm. Read about the Battle for Berlin 2011. A couple of extra players have been invited to that. You can have a look at all the IPL 4 qualifiers that have been going on. You can check out the first IPL Fight Club. It's going to be between White Raw and Sheth. Last up, read about Polar Fluke, remember, 5-Gate November. I'm going to be doing a quick feature video on this a bit later in the week, so you don't really need to read about that now. I'll tell you all about it then. Now it's time for the community news and updates, and the first piece we have to look at is a really special one. So you guys and girls might remember that pretty much a year ago, a video came out called StarCraft First Contact. This was from the guys over at SC Legacy, and this was an absolutely amazing fan-made cinematic based on the StarCraft universe, but that cinematic is nothing compared to what they've done with Final Metamorphosis. Yes, the cinematic experience that everyone's apparently been waiting for is finally here. You can have a look at Final Metamorphosis right here on YouTube, and I have to say that it's worth every second spent watching it. Now there's an entire post up over at SC Legacy that pretty much covers everything. The good and bad things they learned from making First Contact, how much time they spent doing it, what kind of hardware they have, what the guys that worked on all of this actually do for a living, and much more. I honestly couldn't believe that this was fan-made and that someone from Blizzard didn't make this, because it really looks the part. The top comments on the video pretty much sum my reactions up too. Why haven't these guys been hired by Blizzard already? I won't be spoiling anything that happens in the video for you, so you're gonna have to actually watch it yourself. You can click the annotation on your screen right now to take you there, and yes, it will open in a new window. As I said at the start of this episode, we won't linger too long on each piece because there's a lot to have a look at. On that note, next up we've got another Ponycraft video. Now I will say that this was not made by the same person that made the first one, but that doesn't make it any less awesome. I mean really, My Little Pony and StarCraft II, two of the best things out there right now. So, this one's titled Princess of the Swarm, and it's actually a parody of the recently released StarCraft II Heart of the Swarm preview trailer. I can't really say much more about this other than it must be pretty difficult to set something like this up, so check it out, and I would say just appreciate it for what it is. A bit of fun. You can find it right here on YouTube. No, that's not the end of our videos just yet. We've got another one to have a look at now. This one, the next in the Husky Tales series. Episode 2, Little Friend, Big Enemy. I've actually personally been enjoying this series a lot, although there have only been 2 episodes. It seems like it has a lot of potential, and I like the way they've set it up. So if you want to find out what happens when Husky continues his adventures through the StarCraft universe with even less luck than last time, you better check this video out. And if you don't like Husky very much, then there's even more reason to watch it, because he does in fact get shot by some concussive shells in this video. If you want to see it, you can also have a look at it right here on YouTube. Okay, so we're nearly done with the video updates, I promise. Next up, we've got a StarCraft II documentary from the guys over at GomTV about none other than Nicolas Tasteless Plott. I will say right off the bat that any StarCraft II fans out there should definitely give this a watch. It gives us a nice bit of insight as to what it's like to be a StarCraft II commentator, and a really good one at that. We also hear a lot about Tasteless himself, about what he was doing and what his life was like before he fell in love with StarCraft II. Where he plans to go with GomTV and his shoutcasting career and everything else. You even get to hear what the guys over at GomTV think about Tasteless and much more. Check it out right here on YouTube and enjoy. I know I've said that a lot in this episode, but there's just so much good stuff this week. Anyway, now on to some slightly more serious stuff before we jump into some less serious stuff and then into the smalls. Now, this past week saw 2 pretty big pieces of community news pop up. One being that Milkis actually said goodbye to the community and said that his involvement with the StarCraft II scene was over. Now, if you don't know who Milkis is, this probably won't interest you, but he actually did a lot of translating for the guys over at MLG, and he's a pretty prominent figure in the community, I suppose. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about all of this, but he wrote a goodbye letter saying that he was done, and then a few days later, he posted an apology as well. He apologized for his poor choice of words in his description of Brood War. He apologized to everyone in the community for creating such a huge amount of drama, and then he apologized apologized to everyone who had ever supported him for whatever reason, and lastly he apologized because he's going to be selfish. So that's all I'm gonna tell you guys. You're gonna have to read these posts for yourselves, and I will warn you that they are pretty long. You can find them in the links below, and if you're wondering, they are over at Team Liquid. The other big piece of community news that I was going to talk about here, and once again pretty briefly, was a post that Cloud set up. And if you're wondering, Cloud is actually a pretty decent StarCraft II player. This post was about prize money in StarCraft II, and for all of the people out there that don't know how it works. Now I can summarize it all pretty quickly for you, and you'll pretty much have the gist of it. You won't even really need to read the entire post. When you win money in StarCraft II tournaments, there's a good chance that you'll have to wait several weeks or months to get it. In the worst case, you won't get it at all. And this does apply to most tournaments, with a few exceptions, say the ones that Blizzard hosts or Total Biscuit's Shoutcraft Invitational. I know he likes to pay the contestants the day after the tournament happened. Now the only reason I'm actually talking about this is because this got a lot of people riled up, as I mentioned, and a lot of big names posted in here, from pro gamers to shoutcasters to the tournament organizers themselves. Now this is once again something you're going to have to look at yourself, and it's pretty interesting. It is pretty sad though that some people are actually still waiting for money from tournaments that happened in 2010. That just goes to show how hard it is actually being a pro gamer, because a lot of these guys actually have to work a job while playing StarCraft II. That is, if they don't have teams paying them a salary, or if they don't get those payouts from the tournaments as quick as they'd like. Anyway, you can read more about both of those stories below. Now next up, I did in fact save the best for last. As you all know, it was Halloween recently, and a lot of YouTubers and streamers out there celebrated by playing some scary games. I will tell you now that Day 9 was in fact one of them, and apparently, during his streaming session of Amnesia, he lost his manhood. Yes, he did in fact shriek like a little girl, and I'm pretty sure at one point he was probably curled up in fetal position on his chair, if that's even possible. I can tell you right now that this was definitely not PG, and if you don't like swearing, you should probably not watch it. But hey, it was absolutely hilarious seeing Day 9 play through Amnesia, and I gotta say, the fans seem to enjoy it a lot too. If you head on over to the Day 9 or even StarCraft subreddit, you'll see a couple of pretty interesting pictures relating to all of this. I will also say that if you want to see one highlight, then just watch the end of the last part. I won't spoil any more than that though. Have a look at it, and let's move on to the community smalls. First up in the smalls, over at the official site, a couple of BlizzCon related posts. Apparently the Blizzard guys want our photos of BlizzCon 2011. You can vote for your favorite costumes in the online costume contest. You can have a look at the 2011 Pumpkin contest winners. There's a new Art of War post up, this one about terrain. There's a new wallpaper to have a look at. You can have a look at a custom map project that is being set up to emulate the Heart of the Swarm multiplayer units. In my opinion, it's a great idea, and they seem to have them working pretty well so far. Apparently this map is coming to the EU and US servers soon. Have a look at a post series that's been started up over at Team Liquid called This Week in StarCraft II. It's pretty much a text version of everything that's happened in the past week. It's pretty useful, and I gotta say, I've definitely enjoyed it so far. You can head on over to Team Liquid to have a look at a few website changes and read how they are in fact now sponsored by Twitch TV. Read an exclusive interview with Todd over at Fnatic.com. Look at Lost Shadow's latest vlogs from Korea. Demaga has answered a couple of community questions, and you can have a look at that over at Team Liquid. Quantic has partnered with Incredible Miracle. Evil Geniuses have set up a partnership with Slayers. Team Empire and Team Razor have joined forces. Nick's Sickness has joined Team AZK. Zenio has left OGS. Sleep and Check are now teamless. Fnatic MSI and TT1 have parted ways. You can read a pretty interesting post about Brood War teams playing StarCraft II over at Team Liquid, and then more from Team Liquid. Read about how a Liquid fan watched EG's Huck win MLG Orlando, and read about StarCraft II at BlizzCon 2011 through the eyes of an esports fan. Then over at BlizzPlanet, read some rumors about a StarCraft motion picture adaptation. Be sure to read about the latest Showcraft episodes, and I will tell you that if you do miss this when it's live, you can still watch it on Total Biscuit's YouTube channel a day or two later. Read about Super 15, a StarCraft II film. Have a look at Abigail and Anna Prosser singing A Whole New StarCraft World. And lastly, have a look how you can make your very own StarCraft II Ultralisk stone sculpture. So sadly, that's all I have for you in the StarCraft news this week. Remember to check the links below for everything that I mentioned, and be sure to like the video, favorite it, share it with your friends, and subscribe. Check back here soon for more, and most importantly, happy StarCrafting.